Okay, hi everyone. I'm Nathan, the co-founder and CEO of Klas, and here with me is Gloria Kim. You can introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Gloria.
Awesome. She's a senior designer, and today we're going to talk about how she got into design, um, why she's loved teaching people, especially aspiring designers, and what are the best tips that she could share with us on how you can share your design knowledge today. So yeah, thanks a lot for taking out the time, Gloria. So yeah, just to get started, what was your background, and how did you really get into design as a whole?
Yeah, so originally my background, I've mentioned earlier, is actually not design, it was in history. So I studied art history, actually with the thought that I was eventually going to work in like a museum or be a curator or work with art, basically. But that kind of changed, and then I actually spent a period of my life studying architecture. So I actually was enrolled in this Master's of Architecture program, but then I dropped out because it's really hard work to be an architect. Like, it's a lot of hours. I did a lot of all-nighters, and I just was really wiped out. So, and the field itself is kind of at the time, a lot of people were like actually telling me, recommending that I consider like an alternative path. So I had a coffee conversation with a friend who at the time was like a web developer slash UX designer, back in the day when it wasn't really a known term. Um, and yeah, he just seemed like really excited about what he was doing. And yeah, so I got really interested in more like working in technology proper. Because I think also what I noticed while working in architecture was that like software was like everything is, computer aided. We call it computer aided design back then. But essentially, like software and technology was completely changing the way things were just being designed. So that made me really kind of scratch my head and wonder. And I think this was like in the mid 2000s, like I just saw like technology as this tsunami coming, especially software like coming. And I just really knew that I had to learn how does it actually work. I all of a sudden I had this like I started kind of realizing I really need to learn how to code, just learn how does this technology work. So that's how I ended up going down the path of going more towards user experience, human computer interaction. Yeah, and then I switched over to a program that was more human computer interaction, and yeah, have been in that space since then. Yeah, in terms of like my career, I initially started off as an interaction designer. Um, like I worked a lot with ad agencies in New York City, so that was kind of where I started off. But then I ended up moving towards user research, user experience research, or design research. Once I started working more with startups, because I saw, like, identified that there's an opportunity to do better design if you have better research. So yeah, so that's how I ended up kind of moving into the design research, user experience research space.
Wow, and I can imagine it's been a lot easier than the previous kind of architectural experience. Would you say it's been a lot easier or a lot harder?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think like in terms of like just in terms of business, it's a better, like if you're kind of entrepreneurial, like you're interested in business, it's better to be in technology. That was actually one of the issues I had with architecture was I really struggle to. I think a lot of architects have this too. Is that professional practice is always kind of questioning like kind of the business model and things like that. And so that was also kind of a concern for me. So because I come from a very middle class kind of background, and I just didn't have time to. I don't have like the the privilege, I guess, the financial privilege to like, just focus on being an architect. I think there are ways to go about it, I've definitely had friends who come from pretty humble backgrounds who are able to make a really good career as an architect. But yeah, the financial consideration was was definitely something that like I had to think about for myself in choosing the path. So
Yeah, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Awesome, awesome. I mean, so how did that now lead you in kind of also becoming a design mentor and design educator? So for the audience that may not know, she's
mm,
currently a senior UX researcher at Okta, a design mentor for Textiles Toronto, and have previously worked at Mozilla too. So that's been quite a career. And I know your this kind of design mentorship and education has kind of like been a side path for you, but you've built quite a reputation in that too. You
mm,
know,
yeah.
so how did that come about?
Yeah, that's a good question. Actually, I so initially I started working with Springboard, which is kind of like an online boot camp for like data science, engineering, software engineering, user experience design. So they actually reached out to me a couple of years ago, and I kind of yeah. So they paired me with some mentees. I and like had the experience of working with mentees in through that curriculum. But I think one of the things that compelled me to become a mentor was in general, I think when I was starting out, I really wish I could have had like someone to really just show me the landscape. And in fact, I was very fortunate to have a couple of mentors uh, kind of within different parts of my career, at different points in my career, that were helpful for me in, showing me, the kind of the landscape, and, the what's out there, what they learned, books, things like the resources, things like that. So because I had that experience, I was very fortunate to have that experience. Naturally, I wanted to share that as well, or maybe not naturally, but just my personality. I wanted to share that as well. And then I kind of did this. I work with Springboard as a mentor, and then I actually did participated with a cohort with First Round Capital in New York remotely. And those are really great experiences because I think it's, sometimes it's almost like having to teach somebody or explain something is like the best way of better understanding yourself. So I definitely experienced that. And then the other thing was, I think there's something about like the whole mentorship thing process. It's like a very practical. And I went through like up to like master's level education, and a part of me sort of regrets like spending. I'm from the U.S. so originally, so yeah, American students. We struggle a lot with like student debt and things like that. And there were a lot of times when I really questioned, did I really need to learn what I'm doing right now professionally through school, or could I have done it in a more like practical kind of, internship, working, side hustle, whatever, just learn through doing, or even having a mentor. And yeah, I think there are a lot of times when I really, I think like programs like Springboard or like these kind of bootcamp things are actually like a really interesting counterpoint to the traditional educational system, which I'm actually very skeptical of. For certain things, I think for certain things where the topic is really technical or detailed, like the sciences, the hard sciences, I think that's something where you can't really get around. Or healthcare, there's certain things you can't really get around the whole certification school environment, but everything else, I think, you really have to think hard and twice about whether you really want to pursue like that kind of, like a traditional educational route, whether it's worth going into debt. So yeah, that's why I really like to, mentor, because I feel like that's another way of learning that's like not necessarily in the school environment. It's a bit more practical. So yeah, I think it's I like to share what I can, with my mentees, and a lot of them have reported, after some time, they've come back to me and told me, oh, thanks, that was so helpful, and that's also very rewarding. to kind of hear. So
That's awesome. And yeah, I actually really agree with what you say around the whole traditional education, especially for things like computer science and all that. Personally, I don't see the need of going to a 5 year program in university to read that when there are so many amazing boot camps out there that can help you train. I mean, that was the reason me personally, I never went to university for that, even though I had a scholarship to
yeah,
study.
yeah. And
Yeah.
you're learning so
Um,
much doing this. It's like crazy. It's like, yeah, you're way
yeah.
ahead of the
Yeah.
game.
Thank you. Yeah, so I think that's a great one. So my very next question now would be, um, first of all, would you want to take this to the next level? Now I know you've kind of been doing this as a almost just as just you said, as just something you love. You've mentored and trained a lot of people in design, built
Mhm.
up a reputation. Now actually even working with organizations such as Techstars and the rest as professional design mentors. What's Do you have any plans of kind of taking this to the next level, launching a sort of academy or organization that is just focused on mentoring and training people? So that's the
Oh,
first question.
yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a good question. Yeah, I've noticed that with like a lot of design or certain types of people who get to, I don't know, a certain point in their career, they usually either start their own consultancy or they just like go into this like huge company and just kind of work in like R&D or yeah, or like yeah, there's other, I'm sure there are other possibilities as well, but yeah, I've thought about that. I think there are a couple of designers who are doing that right now. Yeah, I've definitely heard of people starting up kind of their own schools, but yeah, I'm not sure. Yeah, I don't know. I think for now, I think I'm okay. I've actually thought about doing some sort of like course for research specifically at early stage startups because I feel like that I have a lot of just like a lot of experience doing that, and I've thought about proposing, a topic like that. So yeah, maybe one day I might do something like that, but I think for now, my current position is we're pretty, yeah, I'm pretty like heads down in like what I'm working on.
Yeah.
So it's kind of
Yeah.
intense where I'm at right now.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah.
I can imagine. Well, once you're ready for that, class is always here to talk.
Oh yeah, yeah. I'd
uh,
love to. Yeah, yeah. Could be fun.
yeah. Yeah. So the second question now, the actual main question I wanted to ask now was that in mentoring and training the people you have already, what has been the best tips, or rather, first of all, what has been the experience like, and what are some tips, some unspoken tips, tips that you can't see on any blog, on any website, that
Yeah.
you really can't know until you really get your hands dirty in the
Right.
in the game, that you could give a fellow senior designer, or even people in other verticals that are looking to become a design mentor and educator. Yeah.
To become a design mentor or educator, or to be a designer at like a.
No, no, no. To become a design mentor, to actually help mentor aspiring designers. What are some of the tips, unspoken tips you can give people when looking to mentor other designers? Yeah.
Oh, okay, I see. I think, well, one thing is just having a proclivity for it. Like, some people they're not really good mentors. They're not really good, or maybe they're not good teachers. I know like a lot of actually researchers, brilliant researchers, they, yeah, they just want to research. They don't want to teach, and they're very good researchers, and that's fine. That's always kind of the case, I think, even in like the university. Like you have these like really amazing professors who just don't know how to teach, so the grad students teach for them. But anyhow, I think yeah, so just a proclivity and interest in people, I think, is really important, and being motivated by seeing the success of others, I think, is also an important characteristic. Um, and yeah, I think also in terms of like looking for opportunities, I think a lot of it is just telling people you're interested, and then seeing, asking around, asking your network, hey, I'm interested in this, or, like noticing if somebody's at a particular doing something, follow up and ask them about it, or just reach out to that organization directly. I feel like just random cold emailing and just inquiry can kind of work, especially in areas where, except for a job. I think the job, that if you're cold emailing or cold calling about a job, that's very different. But if you're cold calling or emailing about like being a mentor, that's also very different. That's different because you're offering something. So sometimes it's like you kind of have to make the opportunity. And then like once you get the opportunity, that leads to the next thing, and you can build off of that. So a lot of it is just like initiative and just seeing what's around you, like locally, sometimes your local community, what organizations, groups, meetups, interest you, and then just show up there, ask around, see what you kind of gravitate towards, what kind of people or ideas, kind of interest you, and then just start hanging around them or continue talking to them. Yeah. So some of it's like it's a balance between what are you interested in, and what are other people out there and groups and opportunities that you think that you share a kind of a similar vibe with, because you can't really force certain kinds of relationships, right? It's like you can only do that to a certain degree, and then it's not fun anymore. So
Awesome, awesome. That was a really great answer there. So yeah, we're in our very last two questions. The second to the last now is going to talk about the do's and don'ts. Uh, now you've already kind of touched a bit on this in the previous answer, but if you could kind of elaborate a bit more, what are some do's and don'ts, that is a senior designer or any other person in any other vertical should avoid or should do when thinking about becoming a mentor?
Yeah. Gosh. I think actually we'll avoid. Well, one thing is like I think that right now it's actually kind of there's this fad or trend to be like a mentor. I know like things like ADP really popularized it, and actually it's become like kind of a key way to develop your career further. So that's another interesting thing about the whole like design mentor thing, or just being a mentor. I think when I started off, it was just I just liked doing it, and I felt like I can give back. But now it's becoming this like way to actually expand your network and realm of opportunities. I guess like something to avoid would be, well, not avoid, but maybe try. So try different mentoring at different places. Like I felt like I learned a lot from mentoring from like online bootcamp versus like even like different accelerator or fund types, like First Round versus Techstars. Like they're very different types of mentorship setups. So I kind of learned like what do I like, what do I don't like, but also like you learn like different styles of mentoring, like things like ADP list, and I think Techstars too, to a degree. It was very it's more you have very short intense sessions, and you get like a kind of a smattering of experience of a whole range of different types of people and companies and things like that. And when I worked with Springboard and First Round, it was a lot more like they just pair you with one person or company, and you just have this like sustained kind of check-in over like a course of a couple months. So that's like those are two very different types of mentoring experiences, and I feel like there are pros and cons to both. So yeah, I like to know just sometimes it's like you just want to be open to different types of mentorship experiences, realizing they're not all the same. It's also very dependent on how the program or the company or the school is organized, what's the purpose of it? Like with online boot camps, it's the purpose is you want them to get a job, you know? So that's like also very different from, you know, like some, like a startup that's like early stage or in the ideation phase versus like a startup that's struggling with scaling, you know? So it really depends on the subject matter, but I would say, yeah, I would encourage like try a lot of different types of places and like figure out your sweet spot, and what you feel like you can bring the most value to. So yeah, I don't know if that's like a don't, but I guess another don't would be, I know these days in the age of remote work, it's like a lot of people are like overemployed. There's like this website called like Overemployed or some Reddit group. I don't know. So a lot of people are doing like multiple jobs at once, and that's a little. I think that the I don't know, the hammer is going to come down on that at some point, like because you have to be above board with what you're doing, and there's like this certain kind of professional protocol of like, you know, bringing up to your manager or the place you're making sure there's no conflict of interest, things like that. So when I did things with like Techstars and with even with, well, Springboard is a little bit different because they're students, but if I'm, you know, if I'm going to consult with some startup or something on the side, you know, it's you really should kind of bring it up to be try to be above board with it, because it can cause problems down the road if you're not careful. And I think I noticed that a lot of people these days tend to be a little bit fast and loose about these things, and everything's on the internet, you know, so people can just see what you're doing, which is good and bad, but you just want to make sure that you're not like doing anything that might be perceived or might be like a conflict of interest. So
Awesome, awesome. That's a great answer. So the very last question now is a pretty hard one, but I think we'll be able to kind of get to it. So now the great thing about, you know, upskilling, you know, the upskilling economy, mentoring, and all that is that it's very outcome based. And what that means now is that everyone that seeks a mentor, that seeks someone to upskill them, you know, at the end of that entire program or session, they want a certain outcome. Most people is to either get a job or to start a
right,
new career
yeah,
and
yeah.
all that, you know. What is the best way to optimize for a greater outcome for your students or for your mentees? For example, you know, optimizing on quality versus quantity. You know, there was a time where people thought by training thousands of people, you know, is the best way to really kind of optimize for a better outcome. But right now, especially something that we're really noticing in the upskilling economy now is that people are starting to cut down on the number of people that they're actually mentoring and training. You know, they're starting to reduce that number for more intimate experiences, for longer times with each person and all that. You know, so I would just love your take on that. You know, how do you really see that play out, and what do you think is the best way to optimize for a better outcome for your students and mentees?
Gosh, I think it really depends on the particular mentee. So, uh, for instance, are you saying, is it like the ratio, like the student teacher ratio? Like, what's the best kind of
Yeah, yeah,
for like a
yeah.
topic? I guess, uh, I've never done a group session. Like I've never taught like a group class.
Yeah.
Wait, no, scratch that. I think I have actually. It was like several years ago, so it's like it's very vague memory.
Yeah.
In the like before the pandemic kind of thing. Yeah, like workshops, like things like that. I think like as long as, yeah. So I think with the pro with one-on-one is that you can really customize for that particular situation or, you know, goal, person's student mentee's goals. And sometimes you get a mentee who doesn't have that much industry experience, but more like, you know, school academic experience, and it's trying to get them to get more experience in industry and what are the ways that they can do that, and brainstorming with them on kind of possible solutions so that they can get there. Um, but yeah, I guess like, but going back to your question about like ratio. So I guess like subject matter might matter. It might be play a role if, you know, you're teaching something that may be more applicable to like a lot of people. Like, I don't know, I'm just thinking like maybe people who are early stage independent contributors at a company, they probably all have certain kinds of questions that are really similar, you know,
Yeah.
and then being able to, you know, like have something relevant that is geared towards like that cohort, right? Um, but yeah, but then I think like when it comes to more the thing that the things that are topics that are relevant and useful, that might be more specific to a particular person or you know, like I don't know, maybe a smaller group of people. Okay, so here's an example. Maybe something like accessibility design. Is that something like it probably would make more sense to. It's more about targeting, right? Like who's actually interested in this, who what types of cross-functional team members would be involved in this and material, and you know how do you so just getting those getting that material to the people that it actually matters to and that actually would affect or impact or be relevant to what they're actually doing at work. Yeah, so that's just like that's I don't know if that's a very good example, but
Yeah, I think that covers a bit of like what we're asking. Yeah, yeah, because here at Klas now, what we see with a lot of our existing academies is that people have started to cut down on
oh,
yeah, so there was a time where people thought that by training, 10,000, 50,000 people at a time, that was really the best way to go, but people, what they didn't realize was that people were kind of optimizing for their revenue line, not
right,
really for the best outcome. Because at
yeah,
that point, when you have 1,000 mentees or students, or you have 10,000, that really becomes an event. It's
right.
no longer any sort of educational program, really. So
Mhm.
people are now reducing to 50, 100, 150,
Okay, okay,
which has been really, really interesting to see.
yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, because it's like, I mean, there's that Dunbar number, like 150, and
Yeah.
so I wonder if like maybe it's like the Dunbar number. There's only so many people that you can actually have a
I
relationship
guess.
in kind of a somewhat meaningful way.
Yeah.
That's amazing. 10,000 people. Like, yeah, that's more of an event. That's more of like a Tony Robbins like event or something. Like,
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. So awesome. Thank you so much,
yeah, sure,
Gloria,
anytime.
for taking out some time for the podcast. Once again, everyone, she's a senior designer at Okta, previously worked at Mozilla, and has been a really profound design mentor for a lot of people, including organizations for Techstars, at Techstars, and First Round Capital. Thank you so much, Gloria, and we'll catch up soon.
Yep, sounds good. Nice to see you, Nathan.